Gentlemen, welcome to the show. We appreciate it very, very much. I just want to begin. You heard the intro. You heard what those three candidates are saying. I would love to I have other things to talk to you about. I'm not asking you to make a prediction unless you want to make a prediction. But, Byron, I begin with you. You heard what the three said. What jumped out at you as you listened to those? Those were pretty good 30-second substantive policy clips, Byron. What do you think you heard on that?
Well, look, I think out of all of them, the key is going to be economic growth. And quite frankly, that's where President Trump is going to take the economy and our country. Massive economic growth is going to be key. You have to squeeze the regulatory environment on small businesses. You have to unleash energy, and you have to control prices. All those things have to occur. I think everybody on President Trump's list, no matter who you choose, they're going to be a significant upgrade, like you said, Larry, over Kamala Harris, because the Biden-Harris agenda has been a complete disaster for the American people, whether they're black, white, or Hispanic, whether they're rich, middle income, or poor. Unless you're getting massive subsidies through the Green New Deal crap, you are falling behind under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's America.
I mean, thank you for that, Byron. But let me go to Wesley Hunt. Wesley, it just one thing strikes me. Look, I don't like to get involved in personalities, okay? My criticisms of Ms. Harris and President Biden are substantive criticisms, okay? It's about policies, not personalities. But I do feel when you look at Burgum, who has a fantastic business record, he was a CEO, vastly successful CEO, and he ran a state of North Dakota, which I think is the second largest oil and gas state in the country. Correct me if that's wrong. It could be, but I think that's about right. Anyway, I'm just saying. And then Mr. Vance, by the way, a successful businessman, a successful author. Mr. Vance also served his nation during times of war. He was a military man. I mean, I think these are people with phenomenal backgrounds. And regrettably, I do not see that with Ms. Harris. As far as Joe Biden goes, he's been in Washington for over 50 years. I don't see what his achievements are either. But anyway, Wesley, weigh in. What's on your mind when you heard those clips, if you will, or what's on your mind in general, sir?
Well, to echo what Byron said, our bench is very deep. And if you look at those men that you just put up there, along with the list that we have on the Republican side, our future is going to be very bright no matter who President Trump chooses. What also is President Trump is not going to make a DEI hire like Kamala Harris. She clearly is not qualified to do the job. And sadly, the reason why Joe Biden is still our president right now is because she is unqualified to step in 25th Amendment this guy, and everyone knows it. And so when you look at the strength that the Republicans have for the future, you look at the youth, you look at the experience, look at the exuberance that we have. I got to tell you, I am very excited for what President Trump is going to lay out next week. And whoever his pick is, I think Byron hit the nail on the head. It's going to be a good pick that's going to support President Trump and his economic policies. And I want to tell you this. It is President Trump. It is the New York billionaire that has his finger on the pulse of middle America. He's the one talking about the pocketbook issues. He's the one talking about inflation. He's the one talking about energy prices and gas prices. It is not Scranton Joe. It is President Trump. And I think what we're going to see next week is that laid out in a very succinct and convenient way for the American public to say, you know what, if I had to choose between these two guys, you know what, President Trump will be our president in the future, and we are going to enter a state of prosperity starting here in 2025.
Yeah. Byron, let me go back to the campaign strategy. There was a very interesting article in the Atlantic magazine, which is a very left-of-center magazine, but it's a pretty good article of Mr. Trump's campaign managers, Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. Anyway, among other things, I mean, they're casting a very wide net across the electorate. There are states in play today, as both of you fellows understand, like Minnesota, like Virginia. I mean, I just saw numbers that are unbelievable in New Jersey, for heaven's sakes, as well as the Great Lakes states. No, I mean, there's some wild stuff now. If the election were today, they'd be there. The election's not today, so polls are just snapshots. But it's interesting, Byron, one of the groups they're going after, they're reaching out to, and you've heard this before, young black and Hispanic men, I guess between the ages of 18 and 34, And they are having great success, according to various polling data. And Mr. Trump himself has gone to rallies, up close and personal, to talk with them. What do you think? Is that a winning strategy? You think that's going to work?
I think it is a winning strategy. What it demonstrates is that Donald Trump is changing the very paradigm of Republican politics and going to engage all voters in our country, because everybody has suffered at the hands of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Whether it's the economy, whether it's immigration, foreign policy, you name it, Larry, everybody has struggled. And so the Trump campaign, that message has been receptive, whether it's the Bronx, Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta, or anywhere else in the country. It's going everywhere. And what's special about young voters in particular is that they have seen the disaster that is the Democrat Party agenda, and they remember when Donald Trump was president of the United States. And they are making a choice between the last two administrations, and it is becoming clearer and clearer every single day. They're choosing Donald J. Trump.
And Wesley, just on a related point to what Byron said, and you all, we've talked about this before, but there's a lot of people, including those young people, but there's a lot of people in this country that want a new administration of strength and toughness and backbone and make a decision and stick with it. Do you know what I'm trying to express it because it's almost as much of a feeling as it is a set of etymologies or words. Strength. They want strength. They want toughness. And I think Trump has it, and I think Biden lacks it, and I think it's one of these invisible hands of this entire election. I saw this when I was a young man, and I went to work for Ronald Reagan 44 years ago, as a matter of fact, during his transition. The country wanted strength and toughness of purpose. And they rejected Jimmy Carter and they went with the Gipper. I think it's kind of similar today. What you think, Wesley? I'm going to give you the last word.
I agree. When America is stronger, the world is stronger. When we have a strong leader, the world knows it. And by the way, when President Trump was in office, we had the Abraham Accords. We had peace in the Middle East. Vladimir Putin wouldn't dare move on President Trump. Xi Jinping wouldn't dare move on President Trump because they respected the strong man. When we have a strong leader, America is an all-around better place. But the world also respects us as well. We have got to return back to those days, a place of respect, a place where America is leading from the front. As a combat veteran, someone that has served this country, I know that when I ask our sons and daughters to go into war or to go into a conflict, I know that that leader is competent. He is sending us because it's the right thing to do, and he is sending us from a position of strength, not weakness. President Trump is the quintessential definition of that, and you are absolutely right, Larry. That's what this country wants. It's what this country needs, and President Trump is going to be our guy.
It's one of those intangibles, It's just a hunch in my gut. I've been around a long time, as you know. I was right there next to Alexander Hamilton in the Treasury during the Revolutionary War. I was there. But I've seen this thing come and go. I've seen this all come and go. I'm talking to two wonderful, talented, brilliant men, and I appreciate your help very much. But fellas, sometimes these elections, policy papers, not so much. Some inner feeling. I think they want Trump tough. That's what I think. I think it's Trump tough. Anyway, Byron Donalds, thank you ever so much, sir. Wesley Hunt, thank you.